I was floored when I realized that the 19th century, a time we often think of as proper and stuffy, was actually the most radical rewiring of the human brain in history. In our last unit, we saw how machines changed how we work. In Unit 7, we're looking at how those machines, combined with new, dangerous ideas, changed how we identify. For the first time, people stopped thinking of themselves as subjects of a king and started thinking of themselves as citizens of a nation. This is Unit 7, 19th Century Perspectives and Political Developments. It's a story of how Europe reached its peak of power and then, almost immediately, began building the machine that would destroy it. If you're hunting for the complexity point, today's episode is your guide to understanding how stability turned into a powder keg. But first, let's do a quick check-in. Are you following the podcast on your preferred listening platform? It's the best way to be notified when a new episode comes out. And all of you are going to want to tune in for the next episode. We're covering the skill of supporting claims with evidence, as in from the documents or beyond the documents. This will help you with both the DBQ and the LEQ. And that's a skill that many students need that little bit of extra something with. We're getting close to the exam, and it's time to take each part of the course seriously. We are under 3 months now. So if there is something specific that you're really struggling with, let me know. I am putting together a final review episode for April 27th, and will answer all of the questions that you send me. Email me at wendy@aphistoryhelp.com or send me a message on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, Facebook. Are you on Facebook? You can even message me from my website or through Spotify. As a matter of fact, I just got a message today from a new student that I'll be tutoring. They contacted me through the website. And think of it like raising your hand and asking a question. That's what I'm here for, to answer your questions, to help you through the class. But speaking of raising your hand, a hello to my listeners in Japan and South Korea. That's right. I just found out in the last couple of days that I've ranked in the top 100 for history podcasts in both of those countries. Thank you. And konnichiwa. And annyeong. Hello. Come in, students, and take your seats. I am Wendy, and this is AP History Help. Today we're covering the most important parts of AP European History Unit 7. We're back with more isms like nationalism, imperialism, social Darwinism, and more. To set the context, which is important to know where we're starting, European states had struggled to maintain international stability in an age of nationalism and revolutions. The breakdown of the concert of Europe opened the door for movements of national unification in Italy and Germany, as well as liberal reforms in other places. Italy and Germany's unification altered European balance power and led to efforts at constructing a new diplomatic order. A variety of motives and methods led to the intensification of European global control and increased tensions among the great powers. Industrial and technological developments, like the Second Industrial Revolution, facilitated European control of global empires. European ideas and culture expressed a tension between objectivity and scientific realism on one hand, and subjectivity and individual expression on the other. Following the revolutions of 1848, Europe turned toward a realist and materialist worldview. Let's start by making sure that you understand what nationalism is. It's a very important concept. It's complex. It's evolving. But at its core, it refers to the identification and loyalty that individuals feel toward their nation or their ethnic group. And it encompasses a wide range of perspectives. Nationalism can serve both as a unifying force as well as a divisive one, fostering a sense of community and identity while also potentially leading to conflict and exclusion of minority groups. So after the Congress of Vienna, the old guard tried to keep a lid on nationalism. But have you ever tried to put the toothpaste back in the tube? You can't do it. So the result was National Unification. This is a huge favorite on the AP Euro exam. You need to know the contrast between the two big unifications, Italy and Germany. In Italy, the Risorgimento was a cocktail of Count Camillo Cavour's diplomacy, Garibaldi's red shirts, the muscles, and a whole lot of French help. In Germany, it's the Otto von Bismarck show. He used realpolitik, the idea that national interest comes before morals or ideology. And he famously said that Germany would not be united by speeches, but by blood and iron. Take a moment to think about what that means, blood and iron. Here's a pro tip. If you get an essay on Bismarck, emphasize that his goal wasn't just to unite the Germans. It was to make Prussia, his goal was to make Prussia the dominant force. His system of alliances kept the peace for 20 years, but it was so complex that once he was fired, the whole thing became a tripwire for war. While Europeans were building nations at home, they were tearing them apart abroad. This is new imperialism. Now, don't confuse that with old imperialism of the 1600s. Back then, it was all about gold and spices, the 3 Gs, right? Now, new imperialism is about total control. Why? What's that? You're asking why? For 3 reasons: industrialization, nationalism, and the civilizing mission. So industrialization, they needed rubber, oil, minerals for their factories, right? Nationalism, a colony was a trophy. If France had one, Britain needed 2. And the civilizing mission sees Europeans using the ideas of social Darwinism to argue that they were biologically superior and had a duty to civilize the world. If you just heard me say social Darwinism and you don't know what that is, please, please, please look it up, commit it to memory. They love to ask about imperialism, and quite often this idea is incorporated, especially into your FRQs. The Berlin Conference of 1884 and 85 is a key piece of evidence here. They literally drew lines on a map of Africa without a single African leader in the room. This created artificial borders that still cause conflicts today. And in your DBQ, you could use that as causation for long-term global instability. Already, time for our episode 56 fun fact. We haven't really talked much about the military gap between Europe and the rest of the world, but it existed at this time. The symbol of that gap was a little thing called the Maxim gun, the world's first fully automatic machine gun. Its inventor, Hiram Maxim, actually thought his invention would make war impossible because it was too deadly. He thought nobody would be crazy enough to charge into it. Well, he was half right. In colonial wars, it was devastatingly effective for Europeans, but he was tragically wrong about the future. Just a few decades later, during World War I, European armies did charge into those guns, leading to the slaughter of millions. It's a classic example of how technological progress, air quotes, in Unit 7 leads directly to the tragedy of Unit 8. The crisis of mind is perhaps the most intellectually trippy part of the AP Euro curriculum. In the late 19th century, The comfortable, predictable, and rational world of the Enlightenment didn't just fade. It was demolished by four major shocks to the human psyche. If you're looking for the complexity point, focus on how these developments moved society from certainty to uncertainty. The biological shock from Charles Darwin. Now, before Darwin, most Europeans believed humans were special creation, separate from the animal kingdom. But Darwin's Origin of Species, written in 1859, suggested that humans were merely the product of blind biological chance and survival of the fittest. The crisis was that it stripped away that divine status of humanity. The distortion, you must know social Darwinism. I said this before, right? Thinkers like Herbert Spencer took those biological theories and misapplied them to society, arguing that strong nations, like you're in Europe, were naturally meant to dominate the weaker ones. And that became the intellectual receipt used to justify new imperialism. Now, the Enlightenment taught that humans were rational beings who made logical choices. But Sigmund Freud basically said, actually, you have no idea why you do what you do, or something like that. So he argued that human behavior is driven by the id, the primal desire, the child who doesn't know better. That behavior is governed by the superego or your social conscience, but mediated by the ego. Now, the crisis comes because if humans are driven by irrational subconscious urges, then the progress of the 19th century was just a thin veil over deep-seated primal aggression. And this helped to explain and even predict the senseless violence of World War I. The physical shock. For 200 years, Newtonian physics, from Isaac Newton, provided a giant security blanket. The universe was a clock, predictable and orderly. And then came the disruptors. Marie Curie discovered radioactivity, proving that atoms, the building blocks of reality, weren't solid and stable, but could decay and change. Max Planck suggested that energy is emitted in quanta, meaning the subatomic world doesn't even follow the laws of the macro world. Albert Einstein, his theory of relativity was the final blow. He argued that time and space are not absolute. They change depending on the observer. The crisis, if time and space aren't even solid, what can we actually trust? And then we have the philosophical shock from Friedrich Nietzsche. You can't talk about this without talking about Nietzsche. Nietzsche, I think I said it wrong the first time, Nietzsche. He famously proclaimed God is dead, by which he meant that traditional Christian morality no longer held the power to anchor European society. With the Übermensch, he argued that because there is no objective truth or morality, that supermen must rise up and create their own values through the will to power. Now, the crisis comes because this was a direct attack on parliamentary democracy and liberal values, which many felt were weak. Told you it was kind of mind-blowing. So how does this all manifest in art? AP Euro, I don't give enough attention to art, and I really should. So the crisis of mind is the real reason that art stopped looking like a photograph. If reality is subjective and the mind is irrational, why paint realistically? So before the crisis, we had realism. It showed the grit of the working class. Think Courbet. It was objective. It was like, this is what it really looks like. But then, with the onset of Impressionism, it's the transition. Artists like Monet focused on how light hits the eye in a fleeting moment, and it was the first step towards some subjectivity. And then our peak crisis comes in with post-impressionism and expressionism. Artists like Van Gogh or Munch, the Scream, used distorted colors and shapes to represent the internal psychological state of the artist. The truth wasn't outside in the world, it was inside the mind. I feel like I'm teaching philosophy. It kind of is. So in an LEQ, use these intellectual shifts to explain the causation of the age of anxiety following World War I. The mind was already broken before the first shot was even fired in 1914. So why does all of this matter? Because Unit 7 is the setup. The nationalism of Otto von Bismarck, the imperialism of the scramble for Africa and other places, the irrationality of Freud, it all converged in the summer of 1914. When you're reviewing, try to see the connections. How did the Industrial Revolution in Unit 6 make the new imperialism in Unit 7 possible? How did the blood and iron of unification lead to the alliances of World War I? If you can show those threads, you are well on your way to getting that 5 on your AP Euro exam. Go grab your Student Success Planner, fill out the Unit 7 summary, and keep practicing those SAQs. Next episode is a deep dive into a skill that is essential for the DBQ and the LEQ, supporting your claims with evidence. I covered this sort of way back, first season, episode 14, but we've come a long way since then. So be sure to subscribe and you'll be notified when that episode is released. Or just follow AP History Help on all the socials. I'll let you know when the next episode comes out. And with that, this episode of the AP History Help podcast is now history.